Hello, Dippers. As you can tell, I am not Dre Collins, your host for Knuckle Sammich Podcast. I am the active producer, Lieutenant Pip Shaventone. Last week, I made the bold declaration that I was going to go back to back on my fight picks. And Shackelford said there's no way the polar bear could ever beat the Samoan murderer. But he was wrong. Since last Saturday, Thomas has been in a kind of a hole. We had Dragon out to do this podcast. He sworn off the UFC, claimed that UFC is all about Russia and Russia's whole entire fight card was bullshit and rigged. I disagree. I think that some people just have it, some people don't have it. Pip have it, and Thomas, sorry to say this, but you don't. And I passed it over to Drake.
Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 23 of the Knuckle Sammich Podcast, the official MMA podcast of Sauce on the Side. I'm back from the hijacker, the man, Leighton Pip Shaventone.
The new king on the block.
And joining us, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
I'm here defeated.
Guys, in case you didn't know, we lost. We got our ass kicked this week. Mr. Thomas went 1-3, and he even made the bold declaration to Mr. Pip that if Pip won back-to-back title fights, he would be the man. So now, the student is the master. So, master, drop the noise.
Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich Podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford,
a Sauce on the Side production. All right, so today we're gonna take it a little more relaxed on breaking down just the fights. We have a lot of news and notes to get to. A lot of stuff from the UFC's been building up, hot and heavy. But we're gonna talk about the UFC fight card last week in Moscow and break down a little bit of the fight night that's in this upcoming weekend in Brazil. Kind of an interesting scenario with the main event. So if you're not really, if you're not a week in, week out follower of the UFC, you might not realize it. So we'll dive in, hot and heavy, UFC Moscow. We had Alexei Kunchenko defeated Thiago Alves. Samil Abdurraqi defeated Andrei Arlovsky. And then we had Jan Blachowicz actually submitted Nikita Krylov pretty early in the fight. And then we also had a pretty early submission, first round, of Alexei Oleinik submitted Mark Hunt. Pretty bizarre night of fights, to say the least. Saw a lot of guys come out early looking great and actually pick up losses. And the bad thing is that the guys who came out on fire, unfortunately, were all our picks. And Andrei Arlovsky has been fighting a certain way the past few fights. Comes out this fight, lays an egg. And it's not like he just got completely manhandled or dominated. Completely bizarre night. Shackelford, we don't have to talk about every fight in depth, but just the night as a whole. Have you seen a night that's been this bizarre recently in the UFC?
No, it was super weird. I mean, it was in Russia, and we made the joke, don't pick against a Russian.
If you didn't, you'd have won.
I'm looking. There was 2 Russians that lost on this card,
and there was a lot of them on the card.
Actually, you know what? Nikita Krylov, he doesn't even have the Russian flag. He's got the blue and yellow flag, so he may be like an out of towner Russian. Yeah, he's Ukrainian. So yes, two Russians on this card lost. One of them lost to Jordan Johnson, who's a guy we need to keep our eye on at 185. I believe he's a former Iowa State Buckeye. That dude just smashed this
Ohio State Buckeye?
I'm sorry. Hawkeye. Iowa Hawkeye.
Iowa Hawkeye.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I messed that up.
Hell, you took 3 colleges, mixed them together. I love it.
He smashed this Adam Yandiev dude. And the only other one that lost was another smashing, I believe. No, that was the only guy. One Russian lost on this card, and that's because the American brutalized him.
Well, we need to keep an eye on him because he
He may never make it back.
Yes, he may not fight again.
He might make it back just because he wrestled at Iowa. Like maybe there's some wrestling.
They got to be scared of Dan Gable
yeah,
and Tom
they're
Brains.
afraid Gable and those guys are going to show up. You know, we can joke about it, but there was some weird fights. I mean, well, we could start.
Yeah, joking aside, it was a bizarre.
We could start at the top. Mark Hunt versus Olenek. Mark Hunt. Olenek couldn't walk about a minute into the fight.
No.
He got his leg smashed about 3 times. He legitimately could not walk forward. Hunt stings him with a punch really bad, and then all of a sudden they kind of do a weird clash, and Hunt stumbles down to his knees like he got hurt. I didn't see what hit him. I never saw a replay of what hit
Phantom
him.
punch.
It was a ghost punch is what we're calling it.
It was the Putin punch.
Yeah, that was the Putin punch. Next thing you know, Olenek falls down and grabs Hunt's ankle. Hunt falls down into doggy style position and lets Olenek tap him out. It looked like I don't know. I don't want to call it a job, but we're calling it a job because Leighton got it. The next weird one, Nikita Krylov jumps out on that Jan, and they were pronouncing his name Jan, and I forgot the last name already.
Yeah,
we'll call him
Blagojevich.
Blagojevich.
I actually that's why I nailed Jan, because I watched it and I was like, oh, okay, they called him Jan. In this fight, about 3 minutes into the fight, I said to myself, Nikita Krylov, he's going to be a UFC champion. I seriously said that. That's how good he looked.
Yeah, he was touching Jan up at will. It wasn't even close on the feet. Then he even gets that big takedown and he's touching him up on top, and then all of a sudden he forgets what jiu-jitsu is, rolls over, and then lays there. Second period comes on, again touching Jan up. And then Jan does like a slide by to his back. Nikita jumps, kind of rolls over for what they called an ankle lock. To me, he just looked like he rolled over to his side, got beat up some more. He got tapped with a head and arm choke that's not a head and arm choke. Basically, Jan just had his head and his arm together and squeezed, and Nikita tapped out. Bizarre. Another bizarre one. Arlovsky basically didn't fight. He just stood there and evaded punches from Shamil. Got taken down once or twice and held on. They'd stand him up.
Did you see the takedowns?
Again, it was a weird night. It legit. We talked about this earlier. There was a point where Andre defended the takedown, spun Shamil off easily. Shamil standing there with, I believe, his right side on the cage, his left hand down. Basically,
his jaw was sitting on a pedestal.
Yes, in football you'd call it a pigeonhole. You know, you just, when you're a high school football player, you just couldn't wait to pigeonhole the punter when he wasn't looking. And Andre, you know, has a cocked right hand to throw, and he cocks it back and then just stands there and backs off. And even Dan Hardy, the announcer, is like, oh, he hesitated there. I'm like, he didn't hesitate. He just didn't punch the damn dude.
Yeah. It was odd.
And even the fight was still close. I would have still given the fight to Arlovsky.
I thought Arlovsky still won the fight.
Yeah,
I did.
He lost. The fight that I thought surprised me the most on this, Thiago Alves. He looked damn good. I mean, he pretty much dominated the first round.
He looked very good.
Second round was razor close, and he did fade a bit in the third. And that Kunchenko, I really like that dude. I think he's 19-0 now. He changed his game plan up and went to a more boxing heavy style in that third, and really wore Alves out with some body shots. That dude's gonna be a fun guy to follow. This card, although it was weird, although we went like 1-3 in our picks, I don't know that I've seen a card from the very first fight on the prelims to the end with more unknown guys that looked like they could hop in and fight with anybody. I mean, every single guy, Peter Yan, this Marabek Tuisamov, Magomed, Ankle, all these guys looked like they could jump in and fight top 10 UFC guys, and these guys are just local most of them are from Dagestan, what we talked about last week. They were local Dagestani guys that just jumped in and looked really good. Where if you had a card in St. Louis, like we went and saw, they had some local St. Louis guys. A lot of them got starched by the normal UFC guys.
Yeah, and you know what's odd is that last week I sat here and I told you that this was what was going to, like, that we would see these guys come out of the woodwork. That we had, like, Russia breeds bad dudes. Like, that's what they do. And, you know, you and I sat here last week and we're like, hey, prepare to see some new names come out. Like, you see a guy like Nikita Krylov, he was like 24 years old, top 8 UFC fighter. He decides, hey, I'm going to walk away from this so I can get more popular in Russia. That was the only reason that he left the UFC. So you have guys walking around there that are fighting in, you know, lower level Russian or lower level towards the world, I guess, organizations, higher level Russian organizations, where if you're not in Russia, you really don't know these guys, and they're getting good. They're just not being exposed to the UFC. The UFC hasn't touched these guys, haven't even looked them up yet, and then all of a sudden they come in and just kick ass. And you said it. One Russian lost on this card. That's unbelievable.
And another guy that really jumped out besides Konchenko, this Khalid Murtalazev. He fought CB Dalloway. I don't know if you watch that fight. That dude, he was 13-2. He was a local dude. Basically, that was his town he was in. That's the only reason he made the card. He almost murdered Dalloway. I don't know if you saw it. Herb Dean's getting a lot of flack. That dude, it was a pretty good fight, and then at some point you seen like a look in CB's eyes like, this dude's for real, and that guy just poured it on CB Dalloway, who's a veteran. In the end, CB turned over. I bet the last 30 seconds of the fight, CB turned over to his belly. He was laying on his belly with his head covered up, and this guy was just wailing away with no mercy, and Herb Dean never stopped the fight.
Well, because Herb Dean probably figured, like, hey, this cannot be real. Like, I'm obviously in a dream. I'm not going to stop this fight.
He actually never stopped it. It stopped in between rounds. CB couldn't get up to go to his corner. His cornerman came to him, brought him a stool right there, and Herb was like, if you don't go to your corner, I'm calling the fight. And CB had to tell him, like, I'm done. But like he just took 30 seconds of just basically getting hit like he was a heavy bag by this 13-2 dude who was probably, you know, farming goats the day before.
That is unbelievable. You can, you know, like you and I, we want to say that we got jobbed on a couple, and it was odd, but for, you know, Russia to go out there and throw out guys that, you know, go out there and just, you never heard of them before, and we're just gonna, you know, beat CB Dalloway, who last week I said I even mentioned him as one of the top guys on the card because I like watching him fight. And guys that you've never heard of come out of the woodwork, dominate. Like,
there is a reason for that. I don't know a little history on that. So Russia, they basically had 2 fight promotions, M1 Global and Bodog. 2 different fight promotions, but
Bodog, isn't that like a gambling website?
It is. But in Russia, it's a fight league. It's not the gambling one. But they are. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Russia's not America. It's a communist. The guys that fight for M1, they don't fight anywhere unless they have permission from M1. Just a really, really brief history on this. So when Fedor was the man in Pride, they were trying to set up, and Randy was the man in the UFC, they were trying to set up that Randy-Fedor fight. Now, at this point, the UFC had already taken an upswing and had been doing, you know, The Ultimate Fighter had aired. They had upswing, like this wasn't when they were in their dark days where they thought every show was going to be their last. They were trying to set up that Fedor-Randy fight. They couldn't do it, and the reason they couldn't do it is because M1 was demanding that Dana, Lorenzo, and the other Fertitta brother, his name's slipping me right now, that they give the guys at M1 Global a percentage of the company. And I heard all the way up to like 25% of the company.
Holy smokes.
And they would not let Fedor fight unless that was the thing. Pride, which Fedor did fought in, was highly, highly, highly influenced by the Yakuza and Japanese mob, and M1 and the guys that Fedor's handlers were a big part of that at the time. So just a brief history of how crazy it ain't. America and Russia. If you don't do what they tell you not to do. I told you the story earlier about the guy who's sitting ringside, who's a really notorious Putin / gangster and government official in Russia, who's calling for the murder of homosexuals and all that. But the dude, I told you, Fedor spoke out against him, and that Fedor had a family member get severely beaten the next day, and you ain't never heard Fedor say another word about it.
Yeah,
so it's these guys. We may not see them fight in the UFC again just because the UFC is not in Russia more often. We might see them on, which I did see. I did see a small, brief blip article that in order for the UFC to come over, they had to do some negotiations with M1 to get there. So
wow,
I think they're in the position they probably didn't have to sell percentage of the company like they thought they were back then.
Well, I mean, if they would have been selling a percentage of the company, you'd think that it would have been like a Khabib fight or something like that. That's going to be a huge draw where they go over there.
Really closely related with that guy. I forget his name. There's been a lot of articles put out about him. Any listeners interested, man, Russian sports is insane. You can watch the Icarus documentary on Netflix. Just it's not America. Toast to the US of A.
Yeah.
Even with the orange loofah in office, we got it better than those Russians.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Man, it's just a lot of stuff that goes into this. And we had talked about how this was the first freaking time that the UFC had been over there, and you wonder why. And I didn't even know the backstory, but I knew that, Fedor and Randy had always tried to fight, but they never could get it done. I didn't know why. And it's amazing that it was basically, the whole country of Russia comes out and puts their foot down.
Strong. Imagine that. Imagine going to anything. Imagine going to the grocery store and being like, I'm not paying $3.50 for these oranges. You're going to pay me $1.50 for these oranges. That's essentially what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a product that they knew the UFC wanted and they knew the UFC could make money off of. And they just tried strong arm them. And luckily, Dana White gets a lot of flack for being an asshole. And the Fertittas are some of the smartest businessmen on earth. They didn't waver. They're like, you know what? Whatever. We just won't have the fight. We'll just do 2 more Chuck and Randy fights and make just as much money. So.
Yeah, dude, freaking Dana. Dana does so much shit for me to hate him. But then times like this where he just stands up for himself, and no other sports organization has that.
Can you imagine
you look at
the
Goodell.
Russians coming to Roger, Goodell being like, we'll let this guy be quarterback for your team.
Yeah.
It'd be like Tom Brady. I mean, Fedor at the time was the Tom Brady. So imagine Tom Brady
if he
playing
was
in a Russian
yeah.
football league and be like, hey, we'll let him play if you sign 25% of the NFL to us.
Oh, he would have done that, but he would have shipped him over to Jerry Jones. He'd have said, okay, you take 50% of the company, I'll give him to my buddy Jerry Jones. And
Jerry will straighten this shit out.
Yeah, fights on. Unbelievable, man. And hats off to Dana. I mean,
yeah, that was a smart move, because just a couple years later they sell the damn thing for a gajillion dollars.
Yeah.
Without having to deal with the Yakuza or the Russian freaking KGB.
That's crazy. That is unbelievable. So basically, just to summarize what happened in UFC in Moscow, bizarre. Bizarre to say the least.
Yes.
But I can guarantee the next time that we have a fight, a fight card in Russia, there's going to be dudes hopping out of the woodwork just dominating the UFC
I think the
fighters.
next one will be a Khabib card also, because they had talked about that a little bit. They didn't want to have Conor and Khabib fight in Russia because they didn't know how it was going to go. I will say the fans were insane. If you watch an American card and you watch on Fight Pass, there's usually 2 people in the stands
Yeah.
for those first fights. This had like 15,000 people for the first fight. It was like a main card for the first fight of the night. They're fight fans. They are fight fans in Russia for sure.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. So we'll go ahead and get to another place where they have some fight fans, and that's Brazil. UFC Fight Night Brazil. What specific city is it in this week?
Sao Paulo.
Sao Paulo. So, I feel like this is another card that looks to be bizarre. That's why we said we weren't going to dive into a ton of just the fight breakdowns. So, the first thing that caught our eye, we were looking at, on the Fight Pass, the list of fights. There's 4 people on here with no picture or no record. And one of those people fight Renan Barão.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought, Renan Barão got fighting a no-name 0-0 record, no picture. I go check the odds. Renan Barão minus 125 and Andre Avel plus 105. I mean, these are as dead even as you can get. So odd, very bizarre. And the card is actually headlined by Eric Anders, and he's fighting Thiago Santos. So funny story about this. The original fight was supposed to be Glover Teixeira and Jimmy Manawa. Glover Teixeira pulls out of the fight it was about a month ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About a month ago.
I mean, they announced it, and then he pulled out basically just a couple weeks later.
Yeah, and then Thiago Santos decides that he's going to go up from 185 and fight Jimmy Manawa, and then Jimmy Manawa pulls out, I believe, 2 days ago, and then, bam, have...
Your boy.
Yes, your boy. Eric Anders, your boy, stepping in, who's another 185-pounder, to fight Thiago Santos at 205. So, odd sequence of events here. Anders opens as a plus 140 favorite, or a plus 140 dog to Thiago Santos minus 170 favorite. That's probably the only fight we're really going to break down. There are some notable fights on the card. Sam Alvey's on the card. Like I said, Renan Barão and Antonio
Rogerio. That's Minotauro. That's Minotauro. That's the little... He's a twin
Lil
brother,
Nog.
but he's Lil Nog.
Nog.
Minotauro is the older brother that most people know. Minotauro. Don't
it's
ask
odd.
me.
It's odd.
Why the hell would you do that?
Yeah.
You guys have the exact same name minus like 2 letters in the middle, so you go ahead and make your nicknames the exact same names, just minus 2 letters in the middle.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense
Lil
to me.
Nog, that's what everybody knows about.
But either way, we'll hit it first. We'll hit it heavy. The Eric Anders and Thiago Santos fight. Who's winning that fight?
Just common sense says Santos. He's a higher ranked middleweight who has talked about moving up to 205. Well, this was going to be his jump because Manawa was ranked pretty well at 205, which I would have picked Santos over Manawa also. And Anders, he's not an unproven guy, but he had that loss to Lyoto. And then his last fight, it was a close fight. I mean, remember, we picked him to starch that guy, and he had a close fight with that feller. And he ended up picking it up at the end. So I think maybe if these guys were on a full camp, it would be a much harder choice to pick Santos. But on 5 days' notice, and you're coming off a tough fight from a month ago, and you got to travel to Brazil, you got to deal with all that. I got to think Santos is, just common sense says pick him. I mean, he's a good fighter, great striker, good ground. Probably an edge in all areas over Anders to begin with, but then you throw in the other stuff. I got to go with Santos.
Yeah, I agree. I would have to back in on Santos there. I mean, the whole latency style of picking fighters has become basically the norm, and it's become very good. He's 2-0 in his last 2 picks, and if he sees a guy with a Thor hammer tattooed on a guy's chest...
Yeah,
it's good night.
The only thing that I think would help Anders out is if Leighton actually did his research to know that he played at Alabama. He might be like, "Oh shit, roll tide, we're gonna win." But
that's irrelevant. He had a Thor tattoo on his arm.
No, not on his arm. Latency. This tattoo is on his chest.
It's on his chest.
From the Brock Lesnar tattoo from like belly button to like upper sternum.
Yeah.
It's that, but the Thor hammer.
So basically, you can't hood his chest.
No.
He can't put his chest and hoods you back.
Yes. If you punch him in the chest, you break your hand.
Yeah. See, Thomas, those things you gotta look out for. You want to talk about the technical bullshit? No. Can the guy win a fight? Did the guy look cool doing it? Those are two important things in picking fights.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Deion Sanders mantra, like you look good, you play good, they pay good. And sounds to me like Thiago Santos is going to be getting paid this weekend.
Yeah, and I don't know how, speaking of fight, I don't know how ugly they win or how bad the fighting style is. A dub's a dub.
A dub is a dub, that's true.
That may be right, man. 2 or 3 years ago, whenever I started helping you pick stuff for winners and stuff, it may have been a couple years before, I felt like we hit a lot more. I think now that maybe the sport, the bar from the lower guys to the upper guys, it has really raised. Like, there's so many close fights now. I feel like whenever I first started helping you freaking bet and win money on your goofy betting sites, it's harder now. It really is. I haven't had so many shit weeks of picks in probably the last month. I haven't had that ever. I used to be able to watch a card and pick every 12 fights about, this guy's going to win. And
yeah, you've done that before, and it was unbelievable.
Well, it's not unbelievable anymore. It's.
I think you're saving it. You're saving it for the McGregor card.
Oh.
You're saving it for the McGregor card.
Don't put that juju on me.
You're saving it.
I want to enjoy that fight. I want to have a beer. I want to eat some good food. I don't want to be sitting there nervous as hell the whole time.
You're not going to be drinking beer. You're going to be drinking Proper 12 Irish whiskey.
That's a good segue.
Proper 12 Irish whiskey. We'll segue into it, and this is awesome. So we see all the time fighters, they go ahead and they take their talents to, whether it be like a restaurant or a brewery. Well, Conor McGregor has now opened Proper 12 Irish whiskey, and they have actually started to sell their product. Conor McGregor, he's a salesman, he's a hype man, he's a fighter, he's a father. Can he be successful at this business venture? I think he can. I think this is going to be something that he's going to knock out of the park.
There's no reason that he wouldn't. I mean, how many Irish whiskeys can you name?
Jameson.
And Proper 12. Yes. He's already in the top 2 Irish whiskeys.
That's true.
The only other thing I can name
is cheaper.
Is Bailey's and Guinness, and I only know all those. Now all those aren't whiskey. I only know them because I can do car bombs with them.
Yes, absolutely.
Once a year. So he's already. When I think Irish liqueurs, he's top 2 already. Top 4. There's no reason to think the biggest Irish sports star can't sell whiskey to the world and Irish people.
No, he's already sold 2 bottles to me, and it's awesome. And my favorite part is that Conor McGregor's like taking this, like, it's almost that he forgot like that he is like a little blue collar and like the working man, because he took these pictures to put on his website of him like working back there, like doing the mash and all this stuff, but he's wearing a damn collared shirt and an apron. Like, you're not fooling anybody, Conor. You have like the $500 manicure. You have the hair all done. Come on.
You're not sifting through the mash.
No. He's awesome. He's awesome. I love this move by him, because actually the first Conor McGregor quote that I became to love was he said after his fight, he said, "We're going to go back. We're going to sit down. We're going to have us a glass of Irish whiskey," which this is why I think that this man's a genius, because he was selling his product then.
Before he had a product.
This was 5 years ago. He said, 4 or 5 years ago, he said, "We're going to put the head on the steak." He said, "Just another head on the steak. We're going to drink our Irish whiskey, and we're going to talk about our next fight." And I'm sitting there thinking now, like, this guy knew what he was doing.
Like I said, he's Genghis Khan. He's a conqueror. He's as soon as he wins or loses, it's on to the next one. The wins come more than the losses, and they're way more emphatic. So he's way ahead of the game. There's a reason why he's the highest paid dude ever in the sport. There's a reason why he's the most watched guy in the sport. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's a genius. I think he's going to be successful. I would be surprised.
Whoa. Conor McGregor was the highest paid MMA athlete ever.
Yeah.
Outside the boxing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chuck could those two teams shoot again.
Oh yeah. That's why. So Chuck,
Before Conor's fight against before his fight against Floyd Mayweather, he had like the second placed MMA fighter ever almost doubled up.
yeah. I recall, if I'm recalling correctly, I want to say at one time Randy had received the highest fighter pay ever for one of those Chuck and Randy fights, and it was like $250,000. So that's just as flat. I don't know that they got pay-per-view numbers and all that for. So for the Nate Diaz Conor one, I want to say with pay-per-view and stuff, Conor got around $5 million
To fight Nate Diaz?
to fight Nate Diaz.
God.
So
How much did Nate Diaz get paid?
times are changing.
Enough for a big old bag.
Yeah, a couple million. So for the second one, I want to say Conor got around $20 million and Nate got like $3 million.
What?
Yeah, the fight game.
Well, would you pay to watch Conor McGregor, or are you going to pay to watch Nate Diaz?
No, I'm just going to go to your house and watch something you pay for it.
So don't think his fighting is like.
I already know, yeah. I will say, the only fight I care about really watching are John Jones and Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
John Jones might not have a fight again.
So fighting, their skill levels, compared to other fighters, doesn't necessarily dictate how they get paid. Because Nate Diaz and Conor could fight 10 times, and it's going to be 10 close fights. But Nate's never going to make that money without Conor.
Basic scenario here. Nobody's going to pay. Okay, so if you look up an NFL ticket, if you have to play the Patriots and the Eagles at home in the same year, that ticket price just to get in the door is going to be about $100 difference. I know as a Bears fan, I was looking cheapest ticket in Soldier this year to go watch the Packers, which the Packers, if they played the Patriots 10 times this year, they'd probably win 5 of them. So they're pretty even. And the ticket for the Packers is half of what it is to watch the Patriots. No matter where you sit at. If you want to sit down low, it's half the price than if you want to watch the Patriots. It's because, A, there's not as much of it, so there's not as much volume. You don't get to see the Pack. You know, you can watch the Bears play the Packers every single year. And B, there's just that that aura to it. You know, the Belichick aura, the Tom Brady aura. So if I could compare it to something similar, that's exactly what I would compare it to, because I was actually looking at Patriots Bears tickets this year.
Yeah, it's the fight pay scale is weird. I saw a thing, or I heard a thing on another show, Canelo and Triple G the other night, which I didn't watch. I heard was a good fight and was another really close fight. I heard that their flat fee before pay-per-view and stuff like that was $5 and $3 million.
5 and 3 million.
Yeah, and those are the two biggest names in boxing, aside from Anthony Joshua.
And Conor McGregor made 100.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
And that goes to show you right there. Yeah, Conor, a guy that was 0-0 in professional boxing, went against Floyd, the best guy to do it of all time. He made $100 million. He was the B side. How much do you think Floyd made?
That's crazy. That is crazy. Actually, you segued us pretty well. So, I hate boxing. I'm going to come out and say that. I hate boxing because it's always something, you know, and it's always something fishy. And, you know, whether your best boxers in the world just basically stick and run, or you have a fight that comes to a decision and the decision's always wrong. I mean, we give the MMA, we give an MMA card shit if they have one fight get decided the wrong way. Yeah. Well, there's 12 of them on a card. Yeah. So if you decide 8% wrong all the time, I'll be okay with that. But whenever boxing comes down and they say, okay, you're going to buy 4 fights and that's all we're going to have this night, and 50% of them are judged wrong, I have a problem with that. 8% I can deal with, 50 I don't. Triple G Canelo, biggest fight probably since Conor and Floyd last year.
I mean, they're the two biggest names.
They're the
two biggest names other than Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight champ now.
Yeah, two biggest names in boxing, with the exception of very, very small. The exception's very small there. So at the end of the fight, okay, so a lot of people came out and said Triple G got hosed, Triple G got hosed. Wherever you stand on this fight, people just need to know one thing. Triple G, at the conclusion of the fight, after the 12th round, in the time where the judges have to hand the scorecards off and the scorecards get walked into the octagon, or into the ring. See, my brain automatically goes back to MMA. Triple G was a minus 500 favorite, and Canelo Alvarez was a plus 500 dog. And Canelo Alvarez won that fight.
So if you bet Canelo on that 12, if you bet 100 on Canelo on that,
$500
you get 500
plus your money back.
I didn't watch the fight. I haven't watched it yet. Boxing to me, you said it's boring. I think that's a good. I used to love boxing when I was a kid.
Yes,
until
me
the
too.
UFC came along, and to me, I always loved boxing. I love to box. I love to watch boxing, and
David Tua, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson.
Yes, exactly.
Those were the
I
where it
love
was
to
at.
watch the skills of it. But to me, when you see people that only have two targets, they have the body and the head. You know, but essentially the stomach and the head is their two targets, and they have 3 to 4 punches they can hit with that. It's boring to me. I mean, what makes MMA, even the undercard guys that I don't know their name, there's no end to the style, the technique, the way the fight could go. There's a probability, but there's no end to it. So that's what makes boxing boring to me a little bit. Basically, the way I heard, the way a bunch of analysts that I really respect and like to listen to broke it down was Canelo led the dance this time. He came forward at Triple G, made Triple G become the counter puncher this one, and still Triple G landed fewer shots but harder shots, and Canelo moved more and threw more pitter patter but led the dance a little. Triple G, and I think he came out and said this, he's got to stop Canelo. I mean, I would not doubt that there's going to be a third fight. Why? Because the first one was a draw, the second one was close, and these guys don't have anybody else to fight. Triple G has to stop Canelo, which he hasn't shown in 24 rounds that he has the power to do. Although he is known for a guy that crushes guys, he hasn't shown in 24 rounds that he can stop Canelo, and it's been proven that no matter what happens, even when he
Completely dominates the fight, it's going to be a draw.
And it becomes a draw, that anything short of Canelo putting out, or of Triple G putting Canelo out cold is going to be a Canelo win.
And that's a bummer. I watched the first
fight. He's
fight.
Younger. He's better looking. He's from Mexico. He's got everything that boxing needs for the years to come. Now that they don't have Floyd, now that they don't have Oscar De La Hoya, and that's another thing. Canelo's a De La Hoya guy.
Yeah.
So boxing's still fun. I still like to watch it, catch it whenever it's on. But to me, just they lost me. They lost me a long time ago. It's known that they're corrupt. It's known. To put it in perspective, when Conor fought Floyd, it went 9 rounds. Floyd stopped him. Floyd was winning on the cards. Now, if you watch the fight, Floyd threw I believe he threw 1 punch in the first round. So Conor moved forward, threw whatever the punch count was, threw every technique the entire round. Every judge gave that round to Floyd.
Yeah.
And it went like that. And if you watch the fight, the first 4 rounds, Floyd just sat back. Conor was throwing a ton of punches. You absolutely have to give that to the guy who's actually throwing punches.
Yeah.
There's no way not to.
Yeah. I don't care if a guy throws 500 punches, lands 6, but the other guy doesn't. If he throws 1 punch and connects.
Yeah.
The guy who threw 500 punches obviously won the round because he is dictating how the other guy fights.
But to boxing, that's not true.
I know.
You remember when Horn beat Manny Pacquiao a few years ago?
Yeah.
Teddy Atlas and those guys are going nuts, and they're saying by the Queensberry rules, Pacquiao was the cleaner, more effective striker. And I'm like, well, but he threw 10 punches around, and this other dude threw 110, moving forward the whole time. it's just a different. Again, I'll never say that I know as much about boxing as Kellerman or Tony Atlas or those guys. Never.
Kellerman's not.
Tony Atlas, I
he's
remember.
something else.
Kellerman, I'm not a big fan of. That dude, if I could box that dude, I'd box him. Teddy Atlas, I have a lot of respect for. When I was a kid, I remember listening.
Teddy Atlas is 80 and I still can't beat him up. Kellerman's 35 and in his prime, and I'd mop him.
Exactly. Atlas, when I was a kid, what he said on those broadcasts, that was gold to me. When I was a little goofy kid shadow boxing my bedroom, I was remembering goofy shit that Teddy Atlas told me.
Now boxing's turned into Stephen A. and Teddy Atlas, like throwing punches in a screenshot.
They do that because they got a guy like Stephen A. I don't know what he knows about boxing. Probably not much.
No.
And then you got a genius like Teddy Atlas there.
And Stephen A., being Stephen A., obviously talks more, so he just jumps right in front of him, and it takes away any of the fighting knowledge that you can gain. And it's just bam.
They got a lot of problems. I mean, MMA in general, I think does it better than boxing, and I agree. I just think it is. But to me, that's not what makes boxing boring or makes me not want to watch it. It's just the simple fact of, hey, I've got 4 punches I can hit you with. I can hit you in the face or the belly. To me, it kind of puts me asleep a little bit.
You have homework, but before next week, you have to watch this fight. You have to tell me. You have to give me your update. Who won, and you tell me who we put on the hot seat next week.
That's another thing. I don't feel watching MMA. I feel like I've watched enough. I've trained enough wrestling, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu to really to effectively break down a fight. Boxing, I'll feel guilty if I say, hey, this guy for sure won, but I'll watch it and just give you my general consensus.
Yeah, just give me what you think, your initial reaction to the fight. Because I just want to know what you have to say. Because, I mean, your opinion can't be too far off of what judges actually see. Yeah. Because it's a fight. Anytime it's a fight, you can usually tell who won the fight. You can tell who lost the fight. It doesn't matter if you know what you're talking about. I mean, it's, pretty barbaric and obvious. So, one of the last things we have down on our news and notes, John Jones, they come in and retroactively suspend him from MMA. He's going to, be cleared October 28th. Guess what time that's in time for? UFC 230. Just like you called, and I gotta pat you on the back. UFC 230 in MSG, John Jones, he's a New York guy. MSG is looking for a headliner of the fight. Poirier, Nate Diaz, that's the second to last fight of the night, but it can't be the headliner. John Jones, we're gonna pencil him in there. I'm ready to just say it's him.
You might as well ink it in.
Yes, ink it in there. He is going to be your MSG headliner. Stamp it, sign it, seal it. It's all good, baby. Who's going to be his opponent? Give me a couple.
In my head, I've narrowed it down to Anderson Silva, Gustafson, Anthony Smith.
Anthony Smith fights Vulcan this week. Or
he does fight
October 27th, I believe he fights Vulcan.
Okay. Well,
otherwise, I would be all in on that fight.
Okay, man, I forgot about that. We'll throw old Jan in there, and instead of Smith, I'll say Jan because
I think Jan's very good.
He's number 4 ranked guy. Didn't get any injuries this last fight. As far as a headlining MSG goes, really all you need is John Jones. So I would say John Jones, Anderson Silva, which Anderson might be in a little red tape too. I'm not for sure. That would be a huge one. Without Anderson, the next step would be Gus. And we know Gus had that weird, hey, I'm injured. He was saying he wasn't that injured, and then his management came out and said he was very injured and couldn't fight. So they actually pushed him off. So I would say the top runner would be Gus. Second in line would be Anderson. And I got to think Jan's got to be up there, because he's the number 4 ranked guy, 4 wins in a row. He beat Ilir Latifi, who's way up there. It won't be DC. I know people are going to be calling for that DC match.
What about
we
Stipe?
know the DC.
Stipe. That's who I think it's going to be.
Damn, I didn't even think about that.
I think it's going to be Stipe.
I did not even think about
Stipe?
that. And they were calling for John Stipe before
he
popped. You know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to agree with you.
I think
Top
it's Stipe.
Top of the list, Stipe.
Stipe in college wrestled for Cleveland State, Ohio guy. Big, huge Cleveland guy. So you get that mix of Cleveland and New York. I know Cleveland's a little bit of ways, but it's not that far.
Still east.
It's still east.
We're Midwest. We're in the middle of the damn continental U.S.
And
it's east.
It's east. I think that would be a huge draw, and I think that
I didn't even
John
think
Jones.
of that.
John Jones.
I didn't even think of that. And Jones has been talking about wanting to beat. He wants to fight DC at heavyweight.
Yeah.
Now I don't know that DC
That's setting
will
it
give
up.
it to him and all that, but yeah, if he fights.
If he beats Stipe, what else can he do?
Stipe at heavyweight. Well, yeah. What the hell else you gonna do?
Yeah.
What the hell else you gonna do?
I
Damn,
think that's going to be it. I think that's going to be it.
I actually hope that's.
I hope it is too.
That wasn't what I guessed, but I hope that's what happens.
Yeah, I think it's going. It has to be, because I was thinking about other fights, and Anthony Smith was the first one that came to my head. I love Anthony Smith. I think he's going to be great. He's still super young. Fought a ton though. I thought it'd be Anthony Smith. Then I was like, okay, Vulcan out. DC broken. Hurt his hand out. I was running through all these guys, and I'm like, it's the most obvious one that we haven't thought of, and it's Stipe.
That's the way to put it.
Yeah, it was the most obvious one.
As soon as you said that in my head, my wheels started turning. Like, oh shit, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah,
it's beautiful. I want to see that more than I want to see Gustafsson. I want to see that more than I want to see Jan for sure.
And you know what I'm gonna love about that night of fights? It's gonna be Stipe. We're gonna see John Jones. We're gonna see Dustin Poirier. We're gonna see Nate Diaz. We're not going to hand out a damn belt that night. And I love that.
It's going to be one of the baddest ass night of fights with no
Yes.
belt on
It's not even just going to be badass ass without the belt. It makes it more badass that there's not a belt. Because there's not no phony gold that they're throwing around and handing out.
I've said it. I wish that's where we'd go.
I love it.
Wish we'd have badass fights.
That's the night for the bad boys. You got a Diaz brother. You got John Jones. You got everything you need. I love that idea. I think that night would be killer. I would love to be there. But it's just gonna be a good night.
I love it.
And I don't know who would win. I think that would be a great fight. I think DC kind of got. Now. I really think DC got lucky against Stipe. I hate to say it, but I think he did.
I don't think he got lucky, but I don't think Jones has the punching power. You gotta think Stipe ain't gonna get tricked by that again. I don't want to say he got lucky. He tricked him. I've said it a million times. My whole entire high school career, I didn't beat dudes. I tricked them. Tricked them all the time. That's what DC did. I don't think Stipe gets tricked again. And I don't think Jones even has the power in his hands like DC does to trick him.
You know how shitty that's going to be, though, is if Stipe does win that fight, and then everybody comes back and says, oh, DC, John Jones was created by steroids. John Jones was created by steroids. He would have never beat DC.
Is that not a fair assessment?
I don't think that's right, though. I think John Jones was better than DC, and it's
the second time I'll say for sure. I think he got him with that head kick. The first fight came down to DC getting tired, and when you got a guy who's now popped for steroids twice,
but
you got to think.
But if you look at him, I mean, yes, it is the steroid factor. But John Jones is a slender guy. He's not going to get tired.
It's the same thing in baseball. Once the accusation
is there,
that
sucks.
Once the asterisk is there, Mark McGwire. How many freaking home runs did? Wasn't he on the Bash Brothers with Jose Canseco back on the A's in the late 80s, early 90s?
And Barry Bonds.
He was thin as a rail, and he was still smashing the ball.
Yes.
But you remember
the steroid era.
Juiced up, he's on that creatine.
Yeah.
Early 2000s, late 90s.
Creatine.
I know.
Barry Bonds could have been the greatest baseball player of all time.
Cappy could probably break the years down better than us, but that's what you know those guys for. So
steroids.
When the day is done, we will know John Jones is the greatest guy ever with an asterisk by his name.
Yeah, and that's a bummer. Man, I hope we get John Jones. I hope we get Stipe. That would make for a kick-ass night of fights. So last little thing we'll touch on. Shackelford talked about last week how we're going to kind of do just like a little prelude, kind of get ready for the Conor McGregor Khabib fight, kind of break it down, and we'll break it up to 2 separate weeks because otherwise that last day before the fight, we're going to be talking about that fight the whole entire time, not have any time to break down any other fights. So we're going to kind of just break down the fight next week, pick a winner the following week. So Khabib, Conor, update. Presser is tonight. It will be tonight, which is Thursday, and next week we have to dive into the fight a little bit. What do we expect to see at this presser?
I actually have a question about
Layton's
this fight.
raised his hand like it's second grade.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a question about the fight. So it's in Russia, right?
No.
It's in Vegas.
Vegas.
Oh, well, fuck me, never mind.
Wait a second.
There's no stupid questions.
There's no stupid questions. What were you going to say?
No, I actually on Russia and pay-per-view, what time would it be on here?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be in the
Or like,
morning.
would be
That's why they
a
didn't
dumbass
do-
time in Russia to get better sales here.
That's
what
what
I
they
was wondering.
do. That's what they do. When they do big fights in other countries, they do 3 a.m., 4 a.m. cards in the other country.
Do they really?
Yeah, but like that's the other reason why
The pay-per-view fights, they fight at 3 a.m.?
Yeah.
That's awful.
That's
I'll try
miserable.
and look it
Oh,
up
they
to
pack
find
still?
which ones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They've done it in
Didn't they
England.
sell a soccer stadium out?
Yeah, I believe they've done a couple, but I want to say one of the times Michael Bisping fought in the UK, it was like the card started at like 2 a.m. and ended at 4 a.m.
That's a
And
party.
it was packed. It was an insane packed house of drunk United Kingdom people. Can you imagine like
awesome.
trying to work that day or whatever on like
That's crazy.
So yeah, that was another thing I think why they didn't want to throw Khabib right away because they would have to make that decision. Obviously, they're not going to do Khabib on a card like they did this one where it ends at like 2. The main event's going on at 2 in the afternoon.
See, the bizarre thing about Conor, though, is that, like, he... Ireland, obviously, isn't in the same time zone as
These
Vegas.
fans travel.
He goes. He's there now. I would imagine he's already in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He always has this. He has this big mansion. I can't remember whose mansion it is, but he rents it out. Calls it the Mac Mansion, and that's what he rents out. Trains, does everything there.
I think he's
leading up to
actually
the fight.
training in Russia for this.
He's training in Russia.
I remember I told you he was. I haven't. They haven't.
He has to be there by
they
now,
haven't
though.
put anything. I think he's flying in like soon. He's probably there now because
He
the
has to
presser
be.
is tonight. But you remember,
he always comes early so he can get
few
adjusted.
Videos that he put out. You remember he was in Russia for the World Cup.
Right.
He was talking about the building that they built there, the compound. He's been.
Do you think they're
training in
pissed off
Russia.
about Khabib being like kind of just like the outlier who's not in M1 and all this other thing?
Well,
stuff?
he's still really close with all those guys,
Yeah.
but he trains out of AKA.
right.
So I think it's more a thing they don't he's got a bunch of friends in his entourage that are with those M1 and all those gangsters, but I think he's the guy. They know he's the guy that they want the world to see. He's a family man, super religious, nice, humble guy. He's the guy they want to see. They don't want to see the Alexander, Emelianenko with the Russian mob tattoos on his shoulders and knees. That dude's never going to be a main guy.
Right.
So, no, it's planned. It's a plan. It's pre-planned.
Yeah. I cannot wait. I can't wait to dive into this fight, break it down. I know I'm going to be watching a lot of Conor. I know I'm going to be watching a lot of Khabib.
I've done
Trying to get that
nothing to
edge.
watch their fights. I've
Trying to
watched
get that
every
edge.
one of their UFC fights already. I'll probably watch them all again.
You have to watch all those fights. You have to watch the Triple G Canelo fight. You have a lot of homework for next week. Can you get it done?
I can. And one last thing, Rip Kid Yamamoto, one of the greats of the little guys, passed away from cancer about 2 days ago, I think. If you don't know Kid Yamamoto, look him up. Not his UFC fights. He was old and wasn't as good there. Look up his old fights, and you'll see the original Killer Bee.
And on that note, for Drake, for Mr. Shackelford, and your producer, Leighton C.,
The new champ.
as always, Dippers, stay saucy.